Have you ever wondered how the Israel-Palestine conflict began? It's a question that's been asked countless times, and the answer isn't simple. It's a tale woven with the threads of history, politics, and the quest for identity. The story unfolds with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, a realm that held sway over the Middle East for centuries, until its dissolution after World War I. This left a power vacuum, a void that the world powers of the time were eager to fill. Enter the British, taking control of the region known as Palestine, under the auspices of a League of Nations mandate. Their stewardship, however, was not without controversy. In 1917, the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued what would become known as the Balfour Declaration. This document expressed Britain's support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, a promise that sowed the seeds of future discord. The tension between the Jewish and Arab inhabitants of Palestine simmered under the surface during the years of the British Mandate. The promise of a Jewish homeland clashed with the nationalistic aspirations of the Arab majority, resulting in sporadic violence and unrest. The boiling point arrived in 1948 with the establishment of the State of Israel. The birth of a new nation was celebrated by Jews worldwide, but for the Arab nations surrounding Israel, it was a cause for alarm. They saw it as an imposition on what they considered Arab land, and it wasn't long before these tensions exploded into the Arab-Israeli War, a conflict that would set the tone for the ongoing struggle between Israel and Palestine. Thus, the stage was set for a protracted conflict that would span decades. The Six-Day War of 1967 was a turning point in the Israel-Palestine conflict. But why? The answer lies in the intricate dynamics and repercussions of this short but impactful war. To set the scene, the Six-Day War was triggered by escalating tensions between Israel and its neighboring Arab states, primarily Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The bone of contention: territory and national pride. The immediate cause, however, was the closure of the Straits of Tiran by Egypt, a move perceived by Israel as an act of war. The war itself was swift and decisive, lasting just 6 days in June 1967. Israel, through its rapid and strategic military action, emerged victorious, capturing significant territories: the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the Golan Heights from Syria, and most critically for our discussion, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan. These territorial gains were more than mere land acquisitions. They brought about a significant shift in the conflict's dynamics. With the capture of the West Bank and East Jerusalem, Israel found itself in control of a large Palestinian population, marking the beginning of what is often referred to as the occupation. This situation created a new set of complexities and points of contention that still influence the dispute today. The capture of East Jerusalem in particular added a potent religious dimension to the conflict. The city is sacred to both Jews and Muslims, housing significant religious sites like the Western Wall and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israel's annexation of East Jerusalem has been a focal point of discord since. The aftermath of the Six-Day War also saw a shift in the international community's involvement. The United Nations Security Council Resolution 242, passed in November 1967, called for the withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict. This resolution has been the basis for many subsequent peace negotiations, albeit with varying degrees of success. So, the Six-Day War, brief as it was, left a lasting imprint on the Israel-Palestine conflict. It not only changed the geography of the conflict, but also its trajectory. The war and its aftermath reshaped the political landscape, setting the stage for the next chapter of this enduring conflict. In the midst of the ongoing conflict, a new player emerged: Hamas. But what led to its creation? As the conflict between Israel and Palestine grew more intense in the late 20th century, a fresh force surfaced on the scene. It was the winter of 1987 when Hamas, an acronym for Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya, or Islamic Resistance Movement, came into existence. Born out of the First Intifada, or uprising against Israel, Hamas was initially seen as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. Hamas had a clear objective from the start. Its charter, published in 1988, outlined its goal to establish an Islamic state in Palestine, including all of what is now Israel. It rejected any form of compromise or peace with Israel, labeling it as an illegitimate state. This objective was pursued through a dual approach. On one hand, Hamas operated as a political entity, taking part in elections and providing social services. On the other hand, it maintained a military wing, the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades engaged in acts of resistance against Israel, including suicide bombings and rocket attacks. Hamas's stance on Israel and its use of both political and military means to achieve its goals quickly made it a significant player in the conflict. It gained considerable support among Palestinians, particularly in the Gaza Strip, even as it faced international criticism and was labeled a terrorist organization by many countries, including the United States and the European Union. Hamas's emergence added a new layer of complexity to the conflict. This new player, with its uncompromising stance and dual approach, significantly altered the dynamics of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a change that continues to reverberate in the present day. Attempts to resolve the conflict have been numerous, but why have they largely failed? This question has puzzled many for decades. Throughout the years, there have been significant efforts to bring about peace in the region. One of the most notable is the Oslo Accords, signed in 1993 and 1995. This agreement was an attempt to set up a framework that would lead to the resolution of the conflict. Unfortunately, it fell short of its goal, with both sides failing to comply with their obligations. In the year 2000, the Camp David summit was held with the hope of reaching a final agreement. However, the summit ended without an agreement, leading to the Second Intifada or uprising. The violence that ensued further deepened the divide between the Israelis and Palestinians. Intifadas, or uprisings, have had a profound impact on the conflict. The First Intifada, which started in 1987, was a largely unarmed rebellion that involved protests, general strikes, and boycotts. The Second Intifada, which started in 2000, was far more violent, with suicide bombings and military operations becoming commonplace. These uprisings have not only led to a large number of casualties, but have also hardened attitudes on both sides. They have further complicated peace efforts by deepening mistrust and creating a cycle of violence that is difficult to break. So why have peace efforts largely failed? There are several reasons. One is the lack of trust between the two sides. Each side views the other with suspicion, and often sees compromise as a sign of weakness. Another reason is the deep-seated historical and emotional issues that underpin the conflict. These issues, such as the right of return for Palestinian refugees and the status of Jerusalem, are difficult to resolve. There are also external factors at play. Changes in the regional and global political landscape often influence the dynamics of the conflict. The roles of other countries and international organizations can either aid or hinder peace efforts. Despite numerous attempts, a lasting peace remains elusive. The path to peace is difficult and fraught with challenges. However, the pursuit of a just and sustainable solution must continue, for the sake of all those affected by the conflict. Where does the conflict stand today, and what does the future hold? Today, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains a complex and evolving issue. Recent years have seen significant developments, from high-level diplomatic discussions to instances of violence that have tragically impacted both sides of this enduring dispute. The balance of power, the alliances, and the narratives are constantly in flux, reflecting the broader dynamics of a world in motion. The past few years have seen a noticeable shift in global perceptions of the conflict. A Gallup poll revealed a new high in sympathy for Palestinians among U.S. adults, while those not favoring either side reached a new low. This shift is largely attributed to the increased use of social media by Palestinians to share their experiences, and the influence of high-profile celebrities advocating for Palestine. This change in public sentiment is particularly pronounced among Democrats, reflecting a broader political divide in the U.S. However, it's crucial to remember that while public opinion might be shifting, the realities on the ground remain unchanged for many. Palestinians continue to live under occupation or blockade, and the threat of violence is an ever-present reality. As we look to the future, the path towards resolution remains uncertain. The goal of a two-state solution seems distant under the current circumstances, yet the commitment to peace and justice remains unwavering from many quarters. Leaders, diplomats, and peace advocates continue to strive for a just solution, even in the face of unfavorable conditions for restarting negotiations. The future of this conflict also rests on the actions and decisions of the international community. The shifting narratives and growing sympathies for the Palestinian cause could potentially impact policy decisions and diplomatic strategies. However, the road to peace is a long and arduous one, and it requires more than just changing perceptions. It demands sincere efforts, mutual respect, and a commitment to justice from all parties involved. The Israel-Palestine conflict is more than just a geopolitical dispute. It's a human story marked by suffering, resilience, and the indomitable spirit of people on both sides. As we navigate the complexities of this issue, it's important to remember the human cost and strive towards a future where peace, justice, and coexistence are more than just distant dreams. As the conflict continues, the quest for a peaceful resolution remains a challenging yet indispensable endeavor.